another question here. I'm going to start with Dwayne. I've had several questions emailed to me, and two of them right just as we were all talking up here. People are very concerned about cap and trade, and I've had some people talk about what's in store for climate change legislation. How do you feel about that? And also, what's your position on renewable fuels, and how do you think that can play a role in our economy here in North Dakota and our nation?
Well, I believe, for one thing, that right now Congress doesn't even know what they're writing into our cap and trade bill, because they've already said they're going to change it to a gas tax instead of the other taxes they had in it. But right now they're talking about creating jobs, and cap and trade would take away from our job industry, and so we really have to fight against cap and trade. And for renewable fuels, I'm 100% for renewable fuels, and I believe that we're actually cutting ourselves out of some of our renewable fuels by not allowing the hemp industry to to serve us better, because it's just another crop. Say it's not an illegal crop, and they have to. It's something that would create jobs in North Dakota or any other state.
Rick, same question. What's your position on cap and trade renewable fuels?
Well, cap and trade is a job killer. Again, I certainly don't support it. I'm glad that it's stalled. It should have been killed. One of my frustrations, of course, with cap and trade in the House is Earl Pomeroy voted against it, but he didn't provide the leadership to build a coalition to defeat that bill. If you have a party that's in the majority, you not only should vote against these, but you should convince the rest of your party so they don't pass over to the Senate. Cap and trade is a tax on business, it's a tax on individuals, and it will cause government to grow. What we need in North Dakota and what we need in this country is we need to be more self-reliant, and half of our trade deficit is coming from foreign oil. So we have to be independent in our energy production. Now that means using our coal, helping develop and expand our coal, which is one of the cheapest forms of energy. We have to encourage drilling in North Dakota. As a legislator, we had several bills that helped stimulate. Does Red stop?
Yeah.
Oh, well, anyway, I'll stop with that. But we have to encourage energy production, and our goal should be to be independent energy.
All right, we'll probably come back some more cap and trade, but we're going to move on with another question here.
Hi. My name is John. I'm a district chair in North Fargo, and Rick mentioned the flood, and this is something I've been hearing a lot about from my delegates that are signed up for the convention. They're very excited to go to Grand Forks and vote on this very race with all of you on the stage here. The concern that many of them have is if the predicted flood crest happens as it's been predicted to happen on Saturday, they're concerned that they may be disenfranchised as a result of having to protect their homes. And this question goes to each of you. Would you support action on the part of the North Dakota Republican Party to allow people who have to protect the homes of themselves and their neighbors to vote in abstention at the convention? Only seated delegates, of course.
Well, Kevin, why don't you kick us off? Quick answer.
Sure. In fact, anticipating this possibility, I actually called the chairman yesterday and said, well, we need to do whatever we can within the rules to make sure that we maximize people's opportunity to participate in this process. We ought to be as inclusive as possible, realizing that there is this emergency, if you will, this potential, at least, emergency and urgency. So I would, in fact, we had a conference call on it today, Rick and I, and a number of the other officials that will be at the convention, of course, and we came to an agreement that would sort of compress all of that, get a timeline specific so that people knew when they had to be there, when it would begin, and try to shorten that process so we can get people home as quickly as possible to care for that, while at the same time making sure we don't disenfranchise anybody else. Of course, we have to do whatever the rules and state law provides, and it was my understanding from the call that state law does not allow absentee voting or proxy voting, so that's why we talked more about some of the other logistical things that would allow people to get up there and get back hopefully quickly. But we absolutely have to accommodate the maximum participation so as to protect the integrity of the ballot, which is what we're all about.
JD, how do you feel about this flood issue, including our delegates?
Absolutely, we should make provision for the delegates to be able to vote. Every vote should be cast and every vote should be counted. That being said, I'll yield the balance of my time to Mr. Sorum so he can quickly introduce himself.
Thank you, JD. I appreciate that. I'm Paul Sorm. I just want to briefly introduce myself. I'm a small business owner and a true conservative. I consider myself a Reagan conservative, and I got into this race last summer because even in spite of overwhelming odds, Byron Dorgan was still in the race and expected to stay in the race. I felt that the professional politicians weren't up to the task of correcting this critical economic and constitutional problem in our country. I know that the vast majority of Americans trust the judgment of ordinary citizens, especially small business people, more so than professional politicians. And I think there's a reason for that. It's the big spending career politicians that created this mess in Washington. And we don't want to send that same kind of big spending career politician out there to try to fix it. It won't work. And we may end up in a state of endless insolvency in this country. We risk it. This is our one chance to send somebody who's very principled, who knows what he believes, reflects our values in North Dakota, to stand up and change the direction of this country back to the principles that made us great in the first place, called freedom, self-government, limited government. It's called individual rights. If we return to those basic founding principles, we once again will start to become the freest, greatest, most prosperous nation in the history of the world. That's why I'm in this. Thank you. Thanks, JD.
We'll take the next question from the audience.
John, you get your answers? You want to hear from anybody else? You good?
Rick, I'm sorry.
You can do it quick.
Go ahead and fire away.
Well, I would agree. Is this on? I would agree. We need to encourage the delegates that have paid the money, made the commitment, if they have to protect their house or help their neighbors, that we should allow them a process so they can vote. And I know we met at noon and talked about it. My understanding, the Rules Committee was still looking at options that would be available to possibly do something like that.
Wayne, you want to weigh in?
Well, I know that we have to follow the rules, and we shouldn't start now by disobeying the rules, because we're going to Washington, D.C. to actually enforce all of the rules of our government. So I believe that we should stick to our rules, and I'm hoping that the flood just whips right on by and misses us. So.
Mayor Denny Walker today predicted 36 feet, which is pretty much a piece of cake right now. So if Denny's predictions in the past are any